You felt it before. That moment when she seems to be giving herself to you is exactly when you start to lose. That the touch that calms you might be the same one that keeps you bound. Schopenhauer called it the dark warning about hidden lust. And once you see what he saw, you may never look at desire the same way again. What destroys you isn't what the body wants. It's what the mind believes it's choosing. There's a strange peace in the moment you feel wanted, as if something deep within whispers, "Now I'm safe." But that safety is an illusion, carved by centuries of instinct, where every act of affection might only be the visible surface of an invisible strategy. Schopenhauer saw in this an unrelenting mechanism. A man convinces himself he's in control, when in reality he's already been chosen, not for love but for usefulness. The theater of seduction doesn't have to be conscious to be fatal. It's already inscribed in the flesh, in the eyes, in the subtle shift of a voice, in the exact calibration of proximity, until you truly believe you were the one who decided to come closer. You don't notice it happening because desire doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't tear your freedom away at once. It dissolves it, drop by drop, while offering you the antidote to the loneliness you thought you carried alone. And the moment you accept that antidote, it's already too late. You're no longer chasing her for pleasure. You're running to escape the pain of losing her. Maybe that's why he called lust a hidden battlefield. It's a war not fought with weapons, but with gestures and silences, where the prize isn't a body, it's control over the very center of your emotional gravity. And in the end, you can't tell if you desire because you love, or if you love because you desire. What you're about to hear won't feel comfortable, because this isn't about judging or blaming. It's about tearing the mask off something you may still call romance, and seeing what remains when all the poetry burns away. And when that image stares back at you, it will be impossible to unsee. They say every man has his breaking point, but for most it isn't pain that bends the knees, it's pleasure. That's the quiet truth Schopenhauer tried to expose. What moves us is not the pursuit of pleasure, but the escape from the agony of dissatisfaction. And that agony is a master strategist. It waits in silence, hidden behind years of unmet needs, failures you never admitted, and nights where the room felt too big for one man's breath. You think you go to her for passion. You think it's the warmth, the softness, the way her presence seems to silence the chaos in your mind. But that's the illusion. You don't reach for her because you're full of desire. You reach because you're afraid of what happens when you're alone with yourself. The loneliness, the insecurity, the quiet suspicion that your life is slipping through your fingers. Those are the cracks desire seeps into, disguised as salvation. This is why a man who seeks healing in the body of a woman has already surrendered long before he touches her. He is not the hunter. He is the hunted. And the most dangerous part? He's grateful for the chains because they feel warmer than the cold he's running from, like a thirsty animal drinking from a poisoned river. Not because it tastes sweet, but because the desperation is stronger than the fear. Schopenhauer's warning wasn't a condemnation of women, but a mirror for men. If you are already wounded, the battlefield of lust will not heal you. It will consume you. And the enemy is not only outside of you. It lives in the part of your mind that mistakes dependency for devotion and relief for love. It's in that moment, when you kneel before pleasure thinking you're in control, that the real transaction takes place. You're not exchanging touch for intimacy. You're trading autonomy for a temporary escape from yourself, and she might not even know she's holding the leash, but the leash still holds you. If this truth stays with you, subscribe to the channel. It helps us keep bringing what needs to be said, because someone needs to tell you this without fear of breaking the illusion you've been living in. You've been told that surrender in love is beautiful, but no one warns you that surrender without discernment is self-erasure. The man who understands this doesn't stop feeling desire. He stops mistaking it for truth. He can stand in the fire of attraction without letting it rewrite his will. That's the man who can look at beauty, temptation, even affection, and choose rather than be chosen. You've been taught to trust what feels gentle, to believe that tenderness is the proof of safety. But Nietzsche once said, "Every woman is by nature an actress, not in the vulgar sense, but in the instinctive art of shaping her presence to secure what she needs. And when that instinct moves, it doesn't announce itself as lust. It cloaks itself in affection. That's why the hand that soothes you might be the same hand that quietly fastens the chains. The words that lift you up might be chosen, consciously or not, to prepare the ground for surrender. In this hidden theater, lust is not an open fire. It's the slow burn of carefully staged intimacy, designed not to frighten you away, but to keep you exactly where you're most vulnerable, expecting more. A man in this position isn't in control. He's being kept in a permanent state of anticipation. And that is the purest form of dependency. The moment you're waiting for something, you're already submitting to its timing. That's how power shifts without a word. She doesn't have to demand anything from you directly. She simply becomes the gatekeeper to what you crave, and every gesture of warmth becomes a silent negotiation. The tragedy is that it doesn't have to be malicious to be effective. This isn't always the work of a calculated mind. It's often the unspoken choreography of survival, centuries deep in the human animal. A performance so well practiced, it feels natural, even to the one performing it, and you, believing you're reading sincerity, never notice the shift. You feel chosen, but choice in this space is rarely mutual. Schopenhauer saw this as the will of the species at work, the instinct that overrides personal sentiment, shaping interactions to secure not just attraction, but influence. It's important to understand. The war here is not in the loud conflicts of jealousy or betrayal. It's in the quiet control of emotional climate. One day she's the comfort you run to, the next she's distant enough to make you question what you did wrong. You adjust, you bend, you try to win back the warmth. And without realizing it, you are no longer pursuing your own will, you're orbiting hers. The affection becomes the battlefield precisely because it doesn't feel like one. You lower your guard in the soft light of supposed intimacy, thinking you've found refuge. But in that light, your defenses corrode. And the truth is, you're not protecting yourself. You're protecting the connection at all costs, even if the cost is yourself. This is why Nietzsche's observation carries weight. The role is played so convincingly that you forget it is a role. And when the lines between sincerity and strategy blur, you're left holding emotions you can't place, addicted to a cycle you don't fully understand. You might tell yourself that you're strong enough to walk away if things turn toxic. But strength is irrelevant when the game isn't framed as a fight. When the seduction is woven into care, when the leash is silk instead of chain, you stop thinking about escape. You start thinking about keeping the comfort, and that's when the war is won, not with a kiss, but with your quiet agreement to remain in place. Because in this theater, the most effective form of power is the one that makes the captive believe they are free. You've been told your whole life that desire makes you powerful, that the more women you can win, the more control you have over your own story. But Schopenhauer dismantled that illusion with one strike. The man who believes he is the conqueror is, more often, the prey. You see, in the dance of attraction, the steps are rarely your own. You think you're moving toward her because you chose her. But often you've been walking a path she laid long before you even noticed her. And the most unnerving part? She may not even be aware she's doing it. The will of the species, that blind, relentless force Schopenhauer spoke of, doesn't need conscious plotting. It operates beneath awareness, scripting the encounter so that you feel like the author when in truth, you're a character following invisible cues. The man who mistakes this for power is already deep in the trap. He wears his ego like armor. But that armor is made of paper. The validation he feels when she looks at him, touches him, chooses him, it's not strength. It's dependency dressed up as victory. And once your sense of worth is tied to being chosen, you've already given away the one thing you can't get back without a fight: your autonomy. Kierkegaard would call this despair in disguise, a life lived under the illusion of freedom, while every choice you make is tethered to the approval of someone else. And that approval is never free. It always comes with terms, spoken or not. This is the myth of male desire as power, the belief that your longing is a weapon, when it is, in fact, the leash. A man thinks he's reeling her in, but the hook is in his own mouth. The bait? His ego. The desire to be the one she selects. The need to feel exceptional in her eyes. It turns you from hunter to fish, without you ever feeling the shift. In this dynamic, every conquest you celebrate becomes another shackle. Because if your power depends on being desired, it dies the moment the desire fades. You spend your life feeding it, chasing it, protecting it, and the irony is, you call this freedom. Schopenhauer's warning was not meant to strip away all beauty from love or lust. It was meant to strip away the delusion that these forces are under your command. The man who doesn't understand this spends his life confusing his role in the game, thinking he's the player when he's the prize being claimed. The truth is, desire itself is neutral. It can be the spark of connection or the root of enslavement. And the difference is whether you can stand in it without letting it dictate your will. Power in this realm isn't about how many want you. It's about whether you can say no when everything in you wants to say yes. Because that moment, the refusal, is the only time you're truly free. And until you've stood there with temptation at arm's reach and the choice still yours, you don't know what power feels like. You only know it's counterfeit. There's a moment in every man's life when reason becomes a whisper, and desire becomes the only voice he hears. Science has only confirmed what Schopenhauer understood centuries ago. The intellect is the slave of the will. Harvard researchers found in 2018 that when attraction floods the brain with dopamine and oxytocin, the prefrontal cortex, the part that governs critical judgment, goes quiet. In other words, the very machinery of reason steps aside to let the instinct take the wheel. This is the hormonal prison. And like all effective prisons, its walls are invisible. You don't feel trapped, you feel alive. Every message, every glance, every touch from her feels like proof that you're exactly where you should be. And yet, in that state, you're not seeing her. You're seeing the projection your instincts have built. A vision designed not to reveal truth, but to secure possession. That's the danger. Lust doesn't simply cloud judgment. It rewrites reality. The woman in front of you becomes an ideal, stripped of flaws, magnified in beauty, and elevated to something more than human. You don't fall for her. You fall for the version of her your biology has constructed, and you'll defend that image even against the truth. Schopenhauer warned that the will, this blind drive to perpetuate itself, doesn't care about your happiness. It doesn't care if she's right for you, if the relationship is healthy, or if your values align. It only cares that the instinctive bond is formed and maintained long enough to fulfill its purpose. The rest, as he would put it, is poetry, invented by the intellect to justify what the will has already decided. And in this state, red flags aren't just ignored. They're reinterpreted as signs of passion. Distance becomes mystery. Jealousy becomes proof of love. Arguments become the fire that keeps it interesting. The prison walls close in, but because they're built from feelings you crave, you don't want to escape. What's worse is that this hijacking of reason is self-reinforcing. The more you indulge the chemistry, the more it strengthens the bond in your nervous system. Each intimate moment becomes another link in a chain you don't see, until one day you try to pull away and realize you can't without tearing something out of yourself. And this is where many men mistake compulsion for commitment. They believe they're staying because of love, when in truth, they're staying because the withdrawal feels unbearable. The hormonal prison doesn't just keep you close, it convinces you that leaving would mean losing a part of yourself. Breaking free from this state isn't about rejecting desire altogether. It's about learning to see the chemical storm for what it is, a powerful but temporary surge, not a compass for your life. The man who can stand in that storm without letting it decide for him, that's the man who isn't a prisoner. Because once you recognize that the bars were built by your own biology, you can stop mistaking captivity for choice. And in that clarity, you may find the courage to choose not the woman who ignites the strongest rush, but the one who remains when the fire burns down. Romance is rarely the pure freedom it's advertised to be. In truth, it often becomes the most elegant form of control, not through open threats or visible chains, but through the silent weight of moral obligation. This is where the battlefield changes terrain. The physical desire has already bound you, but now the story you've both built becomes the cage. A relationship doesn't need to be healthy to be defended. It only needs a narrative that makes leaving feel like betrayal, fidelity, gratitude, giving it another chance, not hurting her feelings. These aren't just virtues. In the wrong hands or under the wrong instincts, they become the guardrails that keep you from walking away, even when every step inside the relationship is cutting deeper into you. Foucault understood this kind of power well. True control doesn't have to be enforced from the outside. It's most effective when you enforce it on yourself. In romance, this means internalizing the rules so deeply that breaking them feels like breaking yourself. You become your own warden, punishing any thought of escape as if it were a moral failure. The tragedy is that these rules can coexist with genuine affection. She may truly care for you, and you for her. But care is not the same as compatibility, and love is not the same as freedom. Yet, when the bond is framed as sacred, any act of self-preservation risks being painted as cruelty. This is why so many men remain in situations that erode them. They fear not only the loss of the woman, but the loss of the identity they've built around her. If you've spent years seeing yourself as the devoted partner, the loyal protector, the man who never quits, then leaving doesn't just feel like walking away from her. It feels like erasing who you are. And so the romance sustains itself, not because it's thriving, but because it's protected by a moral perimeter you've been convinced you must never cross. It becomes a kind of moral manipulation, a game where the rules ensure that the cost of leaving always feels higher than the cost of staying, even when staying is draining the life out of you. The most insidious part is how subtle it all is. Rarely will she say, "You can't leave." Instead, it's the quiet reminders, the things you've been through together, the ways she's been there for you, the dreams you once shared. These are powerful anchors, and they work because they're built from real moments, the kind you can't dismiss without feeling like you're discarding the truth. But truth has layers. It's possible for a memory to be genuine and still be used as a tool to keep you in place. And until you're willing to see that, you'll keep defending the walls that keep you inside. Breaking that cycle doesn't require bitterness or cruelty. It requires the courage to separate the story from the reality and to choose which one you will live in. You can honor what was real without surrendering to what no longer serves you. Because in the end, a romance that demands your silence, your compliance, or your self-erasure is not love. It's a contract you never had the chance to read before, signing. And the moment you realize that, you'll understand. The only permission you need to walk away is your own. There comes a point when survival demands defiance. When the choice is no longer between staying or leaving, but between living and disappearing inside a role you never truly chose. Schopenhauer called it knowledge of the will, the raw lucidity of recognizing instinct as instinct, stripped of poetry, stripped of excuse. This is the first breath of freedom, to look desire in the face without bowing to it. Defiance here isn't rebellion for its own sake. It's not about rejecting connection, intimacy, or love. It's about refusing to let those things arrive, only on the terms of your captivity. Nietzsche sharpened this truth. He who cannot command himself will forever be commanded by others. And so the antidote to the quiet chains of lust and moral obligation is the deliberate act of self-command. It begins with seeing the mechanism at work, the way your need for comfort is used to dull your awareness, the way your hunger for affection is timed, rationed, and framed so that it feels like a gift you must earn, the way your fear of loss is used to keep you walking in a circle, calling it a path. When you name these patterns, they lose the power of invisibility. But naming them isn't enough. You have to decide where the instinct ends and where your reign begins. This decision is not comfortable. It feels like standing on a cliff, knowing you will have to burn the bridge you built with your own hands. Defiance means you don't rush to feed every hunger. You don't treat every pull toward someone as a command you must obey. You let the moment stretch, even when it feels like it will break you. This is the space where the leash snaps, not because someone let go, but because you stopped holding it yourself. The symbol here is the wolf who, standing before the meat, chooses to wait until the hunter lowers his guard. The wolf still feels the hunger, but hunger doesn't decide for him, and in that moment, he is untouchable. This is not the path of the cynic, it's the path of the lucid. You can still choose intimacy, but you choose it from clarity, not compulsion. You can still give affection, but you give it without letting. It costs you your command over your own will. The world will call this cold. People will say you are guarded or hard to reach. But those who fear a man's self-command are often those who cannot benefit from his lack of it. You are not here to be endlessly accessible. You are here to be whole. And here's the truth most will never face. In love, as in war, you cannot negotiate from a position of dependence. The moment you need someone more than you choose them, the terms are no longer yours. So defiance is not just an act. It is a posture you carry into every connection. The silent reminder to yourself, I am here by choice, not by leash. And if the terms ever demand the death of my will, I will walk away before I kneel. Because in the end, no one can command the man who has already decided he will not trade his crown for a kiss. Jung warned that every impulse denied by consciousness will be claimed by the shadow, returning with greater force, but masked. Ignoring the hidden currents of lust doesn't dissolve them. It only hands the controls to the part of you that operates in darkness. And Schopenhauer knew. Understanding instinct doesn't destroy it, but it allows you to stand as the observer, not the servant. This is the real choice every man faces. To be a character in a story written by another will, or to hold the pen himself. Most never realize they've surrendered authorship. They believe they're acting freely, when in truth, they are reciting lines written by biology, culture, and the invisible contracts of romance. It's not about vilifying women. It's about dismantling the illusions that keep you from seeing the battlefield clearly. Because only when you see the wires can you decide whether to keep dancing or cut them. The truth is darker than most are willing to face. The danger is not in being desired, but in letting desire become the compass that guides your life. A man who cannot separate the instinct to possess from the choice to remain will spend his days chasing a crown he never wears. And here's the shadowed reality that closes the circle. He who does not know the plot of his own desire will forever play a role in a script written by another's will. The symbol is the marionette, arms lifted, head bowed, who suddenly sees the strings. The cut that matters is not the one that severs the tie to another, but the one that frees him from his own blindness. If you've walked with me through this, it's because part of you is already pulling at those strings, and that part of you is worth protecting. Leave your thoughts below. Every voice here matters. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. It helps us keep bringing what isn't being said anywhere else, because the world will keep selling you illusions of love, loyalty, and desire. But here, we cut them open and show you what they're made of. And once you've seen inside, you can never go back to sleep.